Hello anime fan, welcome back to What If Animes 2.0. So in this video you gonna see, what if Naruto led the Equalists as Amon? This is part 1. And if you want more then hit that like button and don't forget to subscribe. So let's get in the video and do check out the author of the story. A man was tossing and turning in a bed, sweat forming all over his body as his mind was gripped by a nightmare that plagued his sleep. Once again, the man found himself as a young boy on a charred, blood-soaked field. The air was saturated with heat as he could see the flames all around him. The blaze burned hot and wild around him, keeping him in one place as he heard the screams. He could never forget those screams, nor the arid stench of charred flesh. As the flames grew closer, pain shot throughout his body as he tried to scream. Yet as he struggled to escape the flames, they continued to encircle him, his eyes starting to burn from the heat. Yet, through the flames he could see several shadows of people just beyond the blaze. Though he couldn't see them clearly, he swore they were looking at him and he could feel as if they were smiling at him, one with his hand open and another flame dancing harmlessly in his palm. The sight of those flames and the feel of their malicious glee at his suffering caused a feeling of anger to bubble deep inside him. His face of pain and fear shifted to one of anger and hatred, as he slowly tried to reach out towards them, his left hand being consumed by the flames. Yet, before he could do something, he heard a voice. It felt cruel, dark, and nasty. There was malice and sheer venom emanating from that voice. And then, all of a sudden, there was some sort of weird gentleness when the voice spoke again to him. Now is not the time, but it will come soon. Now, wake up. The man who was tossing and turning awoke with a jolt, covered in sweat. He took a deep breath as he realized it was morning from the light filtering into his room. Grabbing a towel from his nightstand, he wiped the sweat off his face and quickly worked to calm his breathing. Same nightmare again. Wonder if it's a sign? Slowly his eyes drifted to his left arm, completely covered from shoulder to finger in gray bandages, an unfortunate reminder of that day. The young man sighed as he leaned back against the headboard of his bed, staring quietly out at the window towards the still darkened city just outside his modest home. Though he'd managed to regain his senses, his hand still tightened as a small flicker of his rage still remained. For many years now those visions had haunted him, forcing him to relive the day he'd lost everything, all he'd known and loved, all due to the cruelty of those who'd be blessed with great power, benders. These people had been born with a great gift, one that allowed them to help shape the world in ways others could only dream. Yet, some, like the ones who'd destroyed his life, chose to abuse that power for their own purposes, many without facing any consequences. However, it is in that his attackers made the mistake of letting him live. There was a famous saying, the sheep could not be safe as long as there was a wolf still lived. Before he could ponder that thought further, a ringing sound echoed through the apartment, drawing his eyes to a small, candlestick-styled telephone, resting on his nightstand near his bed. Quickly reaching over, he grabbed the phone and pulled the receiver up to his ear. Hello? Hello, sir? I apologize for disturbing your sleep. But I have urgent news and I felt it important you be informed as soon as possible. Blue eyes narrowed as the young man sat up. It's no problem. Was awake already anyway. Are you still having nightmares, sir? I really think you should see a healer about that. Perhaps they could. We can worry about that later. The young man sighed while pinching his nose in annoyance. Let's focus on the information for right now and worry about my sleep later. So tell me, Lieutenant, what have you discovered? There was a brief silence before the now identified lieutenant spoke. Our spies have confirmed the Avatar is en route to Republic City. It's likely given Councilman Tenzin's return, they are planning to conduct the Avatar's airbending training here as opposed to the North Pole as originally believed. The stranger narrowed his eyes and clenched his fists. He closed his eyes and thought about the news that he had just received. Many years had passed since the death of Avatar Aang. Among the many to bear the title of Avatar, Aang was one with whom he had mixed feelings on, to say the least. Yes, Aang had ultimately saved the world and ended the 100 Years' War, but how many died because he'd chosen to flee from his responsibilities? True, he was a child at the time and it was much to ask of him, yet even so how much suffering and destruction could have been avoided had he honored his responsibilities. Perhaps, if Aang chose to take his duties seriously, maybe his family would still be alive and he'd have more to remember them by than faint memories and the name they gave him. Then again, this was simply a case of, what if? One person, no matter how powerful, did not have the power to save the world. Even the Avatar, as powerful as they were, was still just one person and not a god, no matter what so many others believed. Regardless, the man steeled his emotions and calmed his heart. There was no point in thinking about the past Avatar, he was long dead. The focus was now on this new Avatar. Do we know who this new Avatar is? Any pictures? Are they male or female? Unfortunately, we do not. The White Lotus have done well in concealing as much information on the Avatar as possible. All we know is, of course, that said individual would be from the Water Tribe. The sound of gritting teeth echoed in the room, as the man felt his anger rise. That information was all but useless, as everyone knew from day one that the next Avatar would be from the Water Tribe as dictated by the Avatar cycle. He'd hoped that they could at least learn the Avatar's name or gender. Sir, what would you have us do? We have more than enough spies at the docks and can make a list of any and all incoming new arrivals to the city. Finding this Avatar and confronting them should be, no, sir? The young leader sighed again as he leaned back further, eyes staring at the ceiling for a moment before drifting back to his arm. For now, we'll simply sit back and do nothing. Are you sure? The lieutenant asked, concerned. What about the Avatar? I understand your concerns. However, there is no need to stir the buzzard wasp's nest. The police already have a negative opinion of our organization. Attacking the Avatar unprovoked wouldn't really do us any favors, to say nothing of ruining our public image. With another breath, he slowly got out of his bed and stretched out, still holding the receiver to his ear. We will proceed with our mission. And we will discover the identity of this new Avatar and keep an eye on him or her, but at a safe distance. Until the Avatar chooses to become a threat to our group, we'll treat them as any other citizen of Republic City. Who knows, perhaps we may even be able to sway the Avatar to understand our cause. On the other end, the lieutenant momentarily felt compelled to question his leader's sanity. Swaying the Avatar, it did sound too good to be true. Then again, his leader had accomplished some interesting things himself. Still though, and if the Avatar is indeed a threat, the leader's eyes drifted towards the far wall of his room, where a closet door was open, and inside, a white mask with golden markings and a single large red circle on the forehead hung from a rack. Then, I'll deal with the Avatar myself. I won't risk you or the others fighting against them. For now, leave worrying about the Avatar to me. There was another moment of silence on the line before the lieutenant spoke. I understand, sir. I'll leave you be for now, and if I hear anything more, I will let you know. That seemed to bring a smile to the leader's face. Good to hear. Also, Lou, we talked about the whole sir thing. I appreciate it, but we're equals and friends in this. A chuckle was heard on the other line, and he could practically feel the lieutenant smiling. Right, how could I forget? Well, good night, Naruto, and I will contact you soon. Night, Lou. The now named Naruto said with a smile as he hung up the phone and returned it to his nightstand. Yet his smile slowly dropped as his eyes once again drifted to the window, as he approached, looking outside at the ocean several blocks away and the statue of Avatar Aang at the entrance to Republic City, where his successor would soon be entering. Always knew I'd have to meet the Avatar at some point, and looks like that time has finally come. Wonder what kind of person they'll be. He chuckled with a hint of an edge as his bandaged hand tightened again, a burning sensation slowly creeping up his arm as he glared out into the distance. But, no matter who the Avatar is. As he continued to glare, a faint red glow started to emit from his eyes. I won't let them stand in my way. 1 week later, it was a warm sunny day in Republic City as the people moved along in the usual soup and chaos of life. As the children played and the adults went to work, one 18-year-old man was busy moving his noodle cart into a favorable street to conduct business. It was true what they said about location. It made the difference between making money and acquiring information. And in the case of this particular vendor, acquiring information was the true end goal. Guess things are a bit busier today. Might as well try my luck at the park. The vendor mused as he pushed his cart along in the direction of the park gates. One of the benefits of having a mobile business was that almost no place was off limits and made finding a change of scenery very easy. And in this case, it was especially advantageous for other reasons. Probably should check up on how that rally is going on. Guy might be a loudmouth, but at least he's spreading the message. Pushing his cart along, Naruto's eyes would drift about in various directions around Republic City, taking in the many inhabitants going about their daily business. In many respects, it truly was a marvel that deserved much of the praise it had gotten over the years. A far cry from the more segregated nations that had existed only a couple decades ago. Still blew the boy's mind. This place used to be a simple fishing village known as Cranefish Town. Sadly, for all its positives, there were still far more problems than many would care to admit. Something he was reminded of by the sound of a police siren from a nearby Satumobile sounding off. As he walked past it, his pace slowed slightly, allowing him to listen in on the radio. All officers, crime currently in progress. Creeping Crystal Triad members raiding the warehouse district on Unagi Street. All metal benders dispatch as soon as possible. Naruto frowned as the officers quickly got in their vehicle and rocketed off, leaving him to glare angrily in the direction they were heading, his grip on the handle tightening. Damn triads. Can't go a day without screwing someone over. Naruto had to fight back a growl as he pushed onwards, knowing full well there was little he could do, yet. Leaving that alone for the moment, he continued, selling some noodles here and there before finally arriving at the pristine gates of Republic City Park. Time to see whether he managed to drum up any supporters or not. But first things first. Quietly he pushed his cart over to a nearby pond, more specifically a nice-sized bush just next to it, before bringing it to a stop. Without saying a word, he quickly started boiling some noodles and mixing some ingredients up. Oh, that smells heavenly. You've got a new recipe this time around? Naruto smiled at the voice coming from the bush as he pulled out some noodles and poured them into the bowl before adding some broth and seasoning. I tried adding some possum chicken with lobster crab. The meats go together surprisingly well, if I do say so myself. Once everything was mixed together, he broke a pair of chopsticks and handed them to the bush, an arm quickly reaching out and grabbing it, before a fairly dirty-looking man in a brown vest, pants, unkempt hair and a beard popped out, taking a long whiff of the stew. Ah, living off the land certainly has its perks. But nothing beats a good bowl of noodles every now and again. The man quickly took a seat and started slurping the noodles down while Naruto simply looked upon him with a hint of sadness. You know, Gamu, you don't have to live in a bush. The offer at the shelter is always open. The vagabond simply held up a hand in a halting gesture. I appreciate it, Naruto, I really do, but I'm fine the way things are. Living free and where I want, it's just how I am. That said, he quickly took a hearty sip of his bowl, before holding it out to Naruto. I'm also not opposed to seconds. Nice to see your philosophy on life still allows for handouts. Both men chuckled at the comment as Naruto prepared to pour another helping. Gamu started licking his lips while he prepared the next meal. What are you talking about? Bending is the coolest thing in the world. A rather loud voice immediately drew Naruto's attention to the side. Oh yeah, let me guess, you're a bender. And his face immediately fell into a frown at the second voice entering the conversation. Oh spirits, don't tell me. Quickly handing Gamu the filled bowl, he immediately rushed up the hill to get a look at the source. When he did, he felt his annoyance rise at the sight. Yup, always the loud mouth. In the distance, he could see a small group of people congregating around a makeshift stage, with a large backdrop poster behind it featuring a masked man with a hood. More noticeable, however, was the man in a black hat and green robe currently yelling his head off with a megaphone to the crowd. Naruto had to fight back a facepalm at the situation. Is this his idea of spreading awareness? Picking fights with random benders? And who the hell did he piss off now? The answer proved pretty easy to find, since there was only one frowning girl in water tribe attire seated atop a giant polar bear dog. Wow, never seen a polar bear dog before. Curious now, he watched as the pair continued to argue with each other. Yeah, I'm a bender, she said with a confident smirk, which caused the heckler to turn smug. And I bet you'd just love to knock me off this platform with some waterbending, huh? Buddy, I want to knock you off that platform right now. Naruto mumbled to himself, already mentally going over how he was gonna verbally tear into the guy when he got the chance. However, the water tribe girl managed to beat him to the punch. I'm seriously thinking about it. That actually got the blonde to chuckle a little. Sure, it was kind of proving his point, but the guy was acting like a complete ass, so it wasn't like he wasn't asking for it. Plus, it was pretty clear she wasn't gonna make good on the threat anyway, mainly just proving she wasn't gonna take his crap. Sadly, Big Mouth just had to go and ruin it. This is what's wrong with this city. Benders like this girl use their power to oppress us. His comment immediately got the rest of the crowd to start angrily yelling at the girl, who quickly lost a bit of her cocky attitude. I'm not oppressing anyone, you're oppressing yourself. Again, Naruto chuckled a little at the admittedly weak retort, but also frowned at the angry frenzy the crowd was worked up into. Yeah, gonna need to have a talk with Lou later about this guy. He's way more of a zealot than I expected. His eyes quickly shifted to the girl on the polar bear dog, quickly riding away from the still yelling crowd, frowning at the display. Real shame about that girl. Naruto flinched as he had been so focused on the display that he hadn't noticed Gamu walk up next to him, handing Naruto back the now empty bowl. Spoke with her a little before you showed up, nice enough if a little wet behind the ears. Probably just arrived this morning, didn't even have money for some decent food yet gave me some of the fish she caught not 10 minutes ago. Giving the girl another glance and then at the protester yelling with his megaphone, Naruto quickly headed back to his cart. Sorry Gamu, gotta cut this conversation short. Seems like I've got another customer who is in need of some proper Republic City hospitality. I'll come by tomorrow with another new recipe for you to try. Naruto quickly started pushing his cart while waving at Gamu, who returned it in kind. I'll look forward to it, kid. Scene change, great first day in Republic City, huh? The young water tribe girl mumbled to herself as she led her massive companion through the streets of the city, still stewing over what had just happened. And what was with that jerk anyway? Her question was a bit louder, mostly rhetorical, but her polar bear dog did look at her as if attempting to answer. I mean, what's all this bender oppression stuff he's talking about? I'd never use my bending to bully someone. You know that, right? Again, her companion gave no answer, though it did quirk its eyebrow ever so slightly, almost as if judging her master. The girl in question immediately gave her pet the proverbial stink eye at the nonverbal accusation. Okay, maybe I did want to slap the guy around a little, but I didn't in the end. Plus, I wouldn't even have to use my bending to teach that jerk a few manners. So there. Cue a flat look from the dog that was so clear its intent couldn't be more obvious. See, this is why I don't come to you for advice. You have nothing helpful to say. A loud growl from the girl's stomach immediately shut down any further comments, matched by the sound of her companion as well. And on top of being lost, we're starving too. She groaned almost in defeat, looking at the long path ahead. Think maybe the police will chase us if we fish near docks? No, but given the runoff from the ships and some of the factories, I wouldn't recommend it. Her eyes shot open with a jolt as the pair did an about-face to find a small noodle cart behind them, and a young man. Around her age, with spiky blonde hair, blue eyes and bizarre whisker marks on his face, clad in an orange shirt, black pants with green lines on the sides and matching shoes, offering the pair a polite wave. Hi. The girl slowly and awkwardly waved back. Hi, nice day? The young blonde chuckled a little. Sure is. There was silence for a moment as neither side made a move or said a word following the pleasantries. The newcomer to the city found it incredibly awkward considering how at ease he seemed. So, I'm sorry, who are you? He chuckled again as he pushed the kickstand and walked out in front of the cart. Name's Naruto and I'm just a humble food cart vendor, selling my noodles wherever people need them. And I heard from a particular bush dweller, you're in need of a meal right about now, or am I wrong? Another loud stomach growl answered his question. I figured as much. Almost immediately the girl quickly waved her arms with a look of panic. No, I mean yeah, I'm hungry and everything, but I don't have any money. Her mind immediately fell back to a similar encounter earlier where she was acquainted with the concept of money and how it was kind of important. Shame the White Lotus never mentioned it to her. However, Naruto again just laughed a little as he returned behind his cart and started boiling some noodles. That's not a problem. I'm not one to turn away a hungry customer. Plus, after that whole episode in the park, figured I'd show you not everyone is as charming as that guy was. KORRA winced a little at the reminder of her little demonstration of her acumen in terms of debate. You saw that? Pretty much the whole thing? He said as he mixed up the broth and chopped some bits of meat. Don't let what that guy said get you down. He's got a massive chip on his shoulder and wants everyone to know it. Pulling out a bowl, he quickly added some noodles before finally pouring the broth on top of it, his potential customer unashamedly drooling a little at the smell. Wow. That looks delicious, it is. It's a family recipe. Naruto spoke with a bit of pride as a small gust of wind blew the steam from the bowl into Korra's face, increasing her look of desire. You gonna stand there gawking, or are you gonna have some? Again she hesitated, despite her stomach still screaming in protest. The woman looked at him and spoke. No, I can't do that, however, Naruto again smiled reassuringly. It's okay. No one should live hungry and ill. Naruto placed the finished bowl on the counter with a smile as the young woman continued to eye the meal in wonder. She spared a look up at Naruto and he nodded as she rushed in like lightning, already seated and most of the noodles being shoveled into her mouth. If there was ever a boost to your self-esteem, it was watching someone shovel down your food like it was the best thing in the world. The qualifier that she was probably starving didn't even ruin it. She swallowed her mouthful and let out a sigh of delight. Oh ho ho ho, man. That might be one of the best meals I've ever had, glad to hear you like it. He chuckled heartily as he watched her slurp up the noodles and broth like they were saving her from demise. Quickly he followed up by pulling out another, slightly larger bowl and dumping some leftover meat into it before putting the bowl down near the girl's companion, who immediately started eating with gusto. The duo devoured the food before them in seconds, the girl leaning back and sighing with satisfaction. Never thought a bowl of noodles could taste so good. You really saved me and Naga there. Naruto looked at the only other individual with them and pointed to the dog in question. The girl quickly realized in all the excitement she'd kind of neglected to introduce herself, and had the decency to look embarrassed at the fumble. Right, that's Naga and my name's KORRA. Sorry for the late introduction. Naruto simply scooped up the two empty bowls and brought them over to the small sink of his cart. Hey, you had a rough go around and were starving, plus I'm not a stickler for manners anyway. Still. Once the bowls were out he held his hand out to her, which she happily accepted. Nice to meet you, KORRA. I'm Naruto, and I guess I can officially welcome you to Republic City. The pair broke the handshake, only for KORRA's stomach to again growl, apparently not satisfied. Don't suppose I could ask for a second helping? KORRA already felt bad before, now it just felt like she was taking advantage. Normally I'd be opposed to giving too many handouts. Despite his word choice, his tone made it painfully clear he was being sarcastic as he was already pouring ingredients. But, since you've been such nice company so far, I'd say that earns you another free bowl. KORRA in turn smirked and decided to play along. How fortunate, guess I must be one lucky girl. The two paused and shared a laugh at the attempt at humor as Naruto kept mixing ingredients. KORRA meanwhile taking a moment to look around the city proper. So what brings you to Republic City, KORRA? The Water Tribe native perked up at Naruto's question, the noodle maker looking at her genuinely interested. I mean, I've been living in this city for a while and I don't remember seeing any polar bear dogs running around, so I'm guessing you just got here, right? KORRA took a glance at the bowl in front of her before drifting to the water visible just in the distance. Yeah, I've actually been looking for a way to get to Air Temple Island, but haven't exactly had the best of luck. Air Temple Island? Naruto's eyes widened at the name, suddenly far more intrigued than initially. That's a little surprising? Do you know Councilman Tenzin and his family? Yeah, I actually learned waterbending from Master Katara back in the Southern Water Tribe, and I got to meet Tenzin and his family when they'd visit from time to time. Naruto let out a small whistle, stunned that the woman in front of him had such a pedigree. Getting trained by one of the heroes of the 100 Years' War. Gotta admit, I'm a little jealous. KORRA immediately perked up a little. Are you a waterbender too, Naruto? She'd wondered where exactly he was from given his hair, though his blue eyes had made her consider perhaps he was Water Tribe. Naruto simply chuckled. Hey, nope, I was born in the Earth Kingdom, and no, I'm not an earthbender before you ask, or a firebender either. KORRA's smile quickly started to drop a little. So, you're a non-bender then? Yup. Immediately the mood seemed soured as KORRA quickly recalled the sizable crowd that came to the heckler's defense and feared perhaps her new acquaintance shared his views. I don't think that way, just so you know. Naruto leaned back against his cart, sighing a little. Like that guy in the park. And that bit of insight naturally caused KORRA to have a different reaction. Are you some kind of mind reader? That merited a hard laugh from Naruto. I wish, wouldn't have to ask for orders then. But no, you kind of wear your emotions on your sleeve, metaphorically anyway. Again that comment got a couple of chuckles from KORRA, being reminded that save for arm and wristbands, she didn't have sleeves. Naruto himself continued to smile, effortlessly disarming the growing unease of the situation. Plus, after what just happened, I wouldn't blame you for thinking that way. So, you don't think bending is evil or oppressive? KORRA couldn't help but push a little more, not quite satisfied with his answer. Naruto in turn was slower to respond, his left hand tightening a little as he gazed back at the city. I believe bending is like a lot of things in this world. It can do great good or cause great harm, which one ultimately depends on the bender in question. KORRA felt herself flinch as Naruto's eyes hardened a little. And I've seen more than my share of benders all too happy to abuse what they were born with. His answer hung like a dark cloud over the pair as KORRA mulled over it for a moment before reading another response, only for the sound of a horn to direct her and Naruto's attention as his expression fell into a frown. And speak of the devil. Look who decided to show up. KORRA turned in the direction he was facing and saw a custom red Satomobile with a gold-plated grille shaped like a lion turtle of all things. All around people started to quickly flee, running past the cart or simply hiding in some of the nearby buildings, practically leaving the street empty. What's going on? Who is that? KORRA asked, looking both concerned and a little unnerved when she saw the visible anger all over Naruto's face. Triads. His voice was low, practically a snarl, his expression hardening considerably when the door to the vehicle opened and three men of various heights, builds and attire walked out, approaching a nearby shop, the owner, a rather frail-looking man visibly shaking as they approached. The sight practically set Naruto's blood to a boil, as he struggled to keep his emotions in check. They're called the Triple Threat Triad, one of several bender criminal gangs that use their abilities to bully, extort, injure and even kill whoever they want, though they tend to target non-benders since they can't fight back. Prime example of people who abuse their bending for their own benefit. As if to illustrate his point, the lead goon, likely a waterbender by his attire, approached the owner and began asking for money, while another goon, a firebender, immediately summoned a fireball with his bending. KORRA felt her own anger start to flare up at the display. Eyes drifting through the street for someone trying to help the man, but none came. Isn't anyone gonna try and stop this? Republic City's a big place, too big unfortunately. Naruto's tone was bitter as they watched the firebender smash a phonograph the owner offered as potential compensation. Often the police can't get to the locations fast enough and the triads are long gone before they can do anything. And this district is mainly populated by non-bending civilians, meaning they wouldn't stand much of a chance in a fight. By now the triads were looking to get physical with the owner and Naruto prepared to take a step forward, only for KORRA to beat him to the punch, rushing forward towards the gang without hesitation, her intent clear. While the sight of KORRA rushing to the man's defense raised Naruto's opinion of her, he knew things were likely to get dicey. Rushing back to his cart, he quickly opened a small compartment near the bottom and pulled out a small receiver attached to a miniature radio. "Lou, can you hear me?" A brief moment of static on the line sounded before a voice was heard. "I read you, sir. What's the matter? Triple threats. Trying to extort old man Chung in the Roku district. Gonna need some cleanup and almost certainly back up as well." Naruto watched the bout closely, KORRA having already called attention to herself from the triad, who laughed at the teen's attempt to look threatening. "I have a few of our members nearby. We can be there in 5 minutes." Naruto prepared to say something, only to watch with surprise as KORRA easily caught the lead goon's, pretty sure his name was Viper, water blast before throwing it right back in his face, encasing his head in a block of ice. "Might wanna make it 10 Lou, someone's got it handled already." Naruto again felt himself grin a little at seeing the gangster get a literal taste of his own medicine, and almost laughed when Viper stumbled forward, straight into a roundhouse kick from KORRA that sent him crashing head first into the front of his car. "Someone else is handling it." "Who?" Naruto prepared to answer, only for his words to die when the third goon, an earthbender by his attire, prepared to attack KORRA, only for her to earthbend first, sending him skyward. Almost immediately Naruto felt his entire world go silent, his vision narrowing to only focusing on KORRA, who quickly erased any doubts when she started to out-firebend the last goon. And in that moment Naruto could only mutter out a single sentence. "It's the Avatar." All at once Naruto's senses dulled, as he kept watching KORRA use 3 of the 4 elements. Just from her movements he could tell she was very experienced, as one would expect from an avatar, though even then her talent was evident, able to easily overpower the three criminals with barely any effort. Once more she was able to seamlessly switch from one element to the next as if it were second nature. However, the thing that most caught his eye wasn't her bending, her movements or her admittedly impressive physique now that he was looking more closely, rather it was her attitude. One would expect facing off against three relatively experienced benders and known criminals a person would be a little afraid, especially after admitting to just arriving in Republic City for the first time. However, she'd never lost the cocky smile she'd had since starting the fight. This wasn't a possible life or death struggle, it was a warm-up exercise to her. That observation made Naruto's eyes narrow a little, which only grew a bit more annoyed when after charging at the remaining goon, the firebender, who'd made a last-ditch attempt to attack her, she easily bent his own fire out of the way, grabbed his hands before hurling him straight into the windows of the shop she'd been trying to save. The sound of glass and various phonographs shattering finally brought him out of his little trance and allowed him to finally realize Lu was still trying to call him. Sir, are you absolutely sure you found the avatar? Naruto didn't respond at first, watching as the triple threats attempted to flee in their car, driving past KORRA, and from her expression Naruto knew that wasn't gonna fly. Oh no you don't. KORRA yelled angrily before stomping the ground, sending a tremor of earth through the street and under the car, flipping it into the air before landing back to the ground and crashing finally into another shop. Okay, maybe it was gonna fly, Naruto absent-mindedly noted before confirming that things were over, at least in one sense. Yeah, it's the avatar alright. She's a water tribe girl named KORRA, riding around on a polar bear dog called Naga. And she just stopped the triple threats, along with causing quite a bit of property damage. I'll make sure to get in contact with a larger cleanup crew and arrive shortly. Lu spoke on the other line, a brief sound of a pencil against paper confirmed he'd noted everything said. Naruto nodded as he saw KORRA look over her handiwork. Right, I'll be waiting, though not before I have a word or two with our avatar. Lu sounded like he was gonna argue, but Naruto quickly hung up and approached KORRA, who turned back to him with a giddy smile on his face. Hey, looks like I caught the bad guys. Bet that loud mouth in the park will have to change his tune now huh? Naruto however, didn't share her enthusiasm. Actually, I'm pretty sure you just gave him more material to work with KORRA. KORRA seemed perplexed by his answer. Hey, what's with the sour look? I stopped the criminals didn't I? Rather than answer, Naruto simply pointed behind her, causing the avatar to turn around and quickly feel her smugness drop after getting a clear look at the now heavily damaged street and store she just saved. Oh, even though he wasn't there right now KORRA could practically feel Tenzin's judgmental glare on her back. I mean, it's not that bad. No one was hurt and we did stop them. KORRA gestured to the still downed criminals, stumbling to get up from their ruined car. Naruto groaned a little at the sight, more specifically the extensive damage to the interior and window of the second shop she wrecked. Yeah, catching criminals is good and I'm glad you didn't accidentally hurt somebody, but that's not really the point KORRA. The young avatar still looked a little confused. I mean, yeah it's not great but isn't stopping them what matters in the end? Despite her earlier cocky and somewhat arrogant attitude, Naruto could tell there was genuine confusion at his remark and it was starting to make a bit more sense. KORRA, tell me something. Have you lived in the Southern Water Tribe your whole life? KORRA nodded. Born and raised. This is actually my first time leaving there. Well, back there pretty much all the buildings are made from ice right? And with plenty of waterbenders around, I imagine fixing them if they get damaged only takes a short while right? Again KORRA nodded, still not putting the pieces together. Well here in Republic City, buildings and such are made of all kinds of things. Stone, plaster, wood, just to name a few. Not to mention the windows and everything else that altogether costs a lot of money to fix and can't all be repaired with bending. The road itself wasn't that big a deal, a few earthbenders could fix it in a couple minutes. The shops however, just a quick look made it clear it'd probably cost several thousand yuans to fix, likely a significant amount for two relatively small stores. And finally KORRA seemed to realize a bit more how much damage she caused and regret quickly started to form across her face. I messed up, didn't I? Oh, in a pretty big way. Naruto's tone was more matter-of-fact than harsh, which at least seemed to make KORRA lighten up a little. Not even gonna lie to make me feel a little better? Naruto chuckled at the comment. Sorry, but I'm always honest with everyone and unfortunately, that includes you. Though that did get her to grin a little, she still looked a little bummed over her misstep, causing Naruto to put a hand on the avatar's shoulder and offer a comforting smile. Well, lucky for you I know a couple guys who'll help out with the repairs, so it's not too bad. And since you're kind of a country bumpkin and a shut-in, I think we can give you a slap on the wrist here. His sentiment seemed to be shared by several of the people present, most notably Mr. Chung, who approached the duo. Miss Avatar, thank you for saving my store. He bowed to the young girl, who now looked a bit more shook at realizing how overzealous she'd been, causing her to bow in response. Sorry about the damage, I'll pay for it, assuming Tenzin doesn't chew my head off for it. The sight of her humble shift made Naruto feel a bit more at ease. A little brash and cocky, but seems to be willing to own up to her mistakes, at least when she's made aware of them. Naruto prepared to say something else, when a loud siren overhead immediately caused his head to snap up and him to bite back a curse. And things just keep getting better today. KORRA followed Naruto's line of sight up and was awestruck by the massive airship above them, coated in a dark green with metal lining all across it. Her awe grew when several men leapt from the massive air vehicle, releasing long cords that hooked to nearby telephone cables before dropping to the street, revealing their entire bodies coated in light gray armor. Whoa, metabenders. KORRA looked positively giddy, having only heard about metal bending back in the South Pole. Naruto, however, groaned at her lack of situational awareness. Seems humility isn't the only thing you're gonna need to learn while you're here, KORRA. The metalbenders quickly took stock of the situation, more specifically the three criminals currently lying flat in the broken window. With a simple nod, two other benders quickly set about tying the men up, before the leader approached KORRA, taking a glance at Naruto before focusing on her. Tell me, miss, are you responsible for the damage here? KORRA quickly shrunk as again she realized what exactly Naruto was trying to tell her a few minutes too late. I mean, yeah, but I was only trying to stop those guys from causing damage and hurting anyone. The sound of another few pieces of glass and rubble falling in the shop seemed to only highlight KORRA's recklessness. Seems you did plenty of damage yourself. The officer said with a stern voice, again making KORRA wince a little, only for Naruto to step in. Maybe if you guys got here a little quicker then she wouldn't need to step in. The officer didn't look especially thrilled at being called out. She should have waited for us to arrive and let us do our jobs. Naruto, however, wasn't gonna take it, stepping forward and pointing at the damaged shop. Those triple threat assholes were threatening to burn down Mr. Chung's shop before she stepped in. If she'd done nothing, we'd be waiting for the fire department to show up instead of you guys. The officer looked borderline livid now, while KORRA looked a little flattered at Naruto coming to her defense. Regardless, the situation was getting a bit more tense. For a brief moment Naruto wondered if he'd get arrested, his eyes shifting slightly to behind the officer where he spotted a few seemingly innocuous civilians nearby looking at the situation with bated breath. However, one of the civilians started to pull up on his neckerchief, revealing a prominent red symbol on the front. With barely a twitch, Naruto gestured his fingers downward, telling the group not to act as the officer finally seemed to calm down. Regardless of what could have happened, the fact of the matter is she still damaged property and we're taking her in. And unless you want to join her I suggest you step aside. Naruto briefly weighed his options, knowing this could easily lead to a full-blown scuffle that'd be counterproductive to his group. However, before he could say anything, KORRA stepped forward. I'll go. The officer's prior tension seemed to die down a little, as did the civilians in the back, while Naruto looked a little surprised KORRA was so quick to change her mind. Huh? Are you sure? I mean, I did cause some damage, so probably wouldn't be very smart to make things worse by running and possibly causing more damage. Naruto remained stunned before a small smile appeared on his face. Well, how about that? She can be taught after all. KORRA quickly gave him the stink eye but laughed with him as she was led towards an arriving police wagon. I'll see you around, Naruto. Maybe drop by Air Temple Island if you can, KORRA said as her head was pushed into the cart, the noodle shop owner watching as she was carted away. Naruto offered a wave back, trying to key up a positive facade. I'll look forward to it, KORRA. Seeing the situation diffused for the moment, Naruto walked back to his barren noodle cart, though he wasn't alone for long as an older man with short black hair along with a prominent and long mustache clad in green and gray attire with green glasses, approached the shop. As Naruto slowly started putting away his cooking equipment, he could feel the man's eyes on his back. I already know what you're gonna say, Lou, so can we just skip it? You need to be more careful, sir. What if things had escalated further? But they didn't, Naruto said firmly as he loaded his bowls and pots. And I told you don't call me sir. Especially not in public, it's weird. Fine, Naruto. So, that girl was the Avatar. Yup, way different from what I was expecting. His second-in-command's eyes narrowed at the direction the police wagon had left in. Do you believe she'll be a problem? Naruto's hands stopped moving as he mulled over everything he'd learned about the Avatar so far. Hard to say, she's impulsive, reckless and a bit arrogant, also extremely naive. But she's also compassionate and seems like she is willing to admit when she's wrong, with a little pushing. For now, same as before, we wait and see. The young leader quickly put away the last bit of his equipment and finally turned to look his companion in the eye. On that note, is everything ready for the revelation? Almost, though we're still lacking for the demonstration. At the mention of that, Naruto's eyes drifted to the triple threat members being loaded into their own wagon. Well, I think I might have just found some volunteers. A sigh was heard from Avatar KORRA, currently glancing out the window towards the shoreline back to Republic City. Her mind was still somewhat reeling from all that had taken place over the course of her arrival. It had certainly been a lively first day, though not without a few speed bumps. KORRA, I know you can hear me. Look at me when I'm speaking to you, please. Case in point, this one right here. The Water Tribe teen turned her gaze to the fuming 50-year-old air nomad, currently giving her the most judgmental gaze he could muster. Not far behind, several White Lotus members were keeping watch, making sure she didn't try anything funny, though it was more to keep an eye on her than anything. Tenzin was angrily rubbing his forehead, trying to fight off an impending headache. The newest individual to carry the mantle and title of the Avatar proved to be quite a handful. KORRA's first impression in Republic City was not the greatest and he was still somewhat dealing with the fallout. Though her skill with the elements was impressive, the child lacked complete situational awareness and humility. The triads were becoming quite the nuisance and KORRA's way of handling them was not the best way. And now there was a fairly staggering amount of property damage and an angry police force to placate. He had spent hours at the police station assuring Chief Baifong that this incident would never happen again. Thankfully, KORRA had decided to surrender herself peacefully once the police arrived, which helped her case somewhat and was enough to make Lin give her a slight slap on the wrist for the moment. Honestly, Tenzin was legitimately proud of KORRA's surprisingly mature decision to own up to her mistake and avoid further destruction. However, her decision to disobey his wishes to postpone their training for some time still left him irritated. KORRA, however, had been quick to point out that she'd seemingly had no choice. She had to learn airbending and Tenzin was literally the only person on the planet who could teach her. And Tenzin knew arguing with her wouldn't resolve anything, her choice to come to the city proved that much. And despite the trouble it would no doubt bring, he had to admit it was an easier situation to deal with her coming to train here than him having to relocate to the South Pole. So with few options but to indulge her desires, if only somewhat, well, KORRA, you have managed to make your very first appearance in Republic City a memorable one indeed. Your brash choice of actions have not only led to property damage, but also led to you being arrested and almost going to prison. You have no idea what I had to do to get you released. He rubbed his forehead furiously. I'm dangling off Lin's hit list of tolerable people already. He expected a snarky comment or petulant retort about her having no choice. Instead, KORRA surprisingly looked almost apologetic. Yeah, I'm sorry about that, Tenzin. I was so focused on helping stop those thugs I didn't really consider the aftermath. I'm not sorry that I did it, but, yeah, I could have handled it better. Again to Tenzin's surprise, KORRA actually bowed in apology to the airbending master. I'll make up for it, and I'll pay back the damages I caused too if I need to. Tenzin looked utterly floored, the White Lotus members behind him sharing similar sentiments. I don't think I ever would have gotten a response like that back in the South Pole. Did something happen since I left? Deciding to shelf that question for the moment, Tenzin let off a cough to regain some focus and shift the conversation. Yes. Well, the damage was extensive but luckily it will be covered by the city, though the council certainly wasn't thrilled when I gave them the bill. Even now he could still hear the anger from the Fire Nation and Earth Kingdom representatives. Still, Tenzin merely sighed as he knew getting angry would not help KORRA, and the cost wasn't that serious. Luckily, a local organization helped with the cleanup, which significantly reduced the overall cost of repairs. Still, I hope you'll remember to be more careful next time. We can't cover the costs every time you cause trouble in the city. KORRA nodded, showing a little smile in return. I do, Tenzin, trust me. He saw the contrition in her expression and decided to do just that, nodding happily with her mature response to the situation. So, now that that's all settled, about my airbending training. The young avatar's smile turned into her usual grin, and Tenzin could practically feel the anticipation coming off of her. Honestly, he was a little excited himself, being able to instruct another in the ways of airbending. And hopefully not have to bend to his students' whims now that he had one he didn't have to change the diapers of as a baby. Right, we'll start first thing in the morning. Naturally, I have some airbending robes prepared for you and I expect to see you early for your first lesson. I trust you'll be ready. KORRA practically jumped and pumped her fists in excitement. Oh yeah, finally going to learn airbending. Watch out, Republic City, starting tomorrow, Avatar KORRA is gonna be an airbender. Her excitement was expected, though her confidence bordered on hubris. Seemed she expected to pick it up as easily as she had the other elements. Tenzin couldn't help but smile internally. Learning airbending was going to be a nice wake-up call for KORRA. The next day, Tenzin and his children led KORRA behind the air temple for her first lesson in airbending. Now clad in the orange and yellow airbender robes, KORRA had looked at the center of the area and found a large circle with several wooden panels attached upward. What's that weird contraption? KORRA asked, trying to figure out what exactly she was looking at. It is a time-honored tradition used to teach the most basic fundamentals of airbending. Tenzin, in full-on instructor mode, spoke calmly and with reverence to the ancient tool before them. Jinora, would you care to explain please? Jinora nodded and approached the gates. The goal is to get from one side of the gates to the other without touching them. Sounds easy enough. KORRA smirked confidently, figuring this would be sync, only to slowly worry at the smirk both Tenzin and Ikki had on their faces. Jinora forgot to mention you have to do it while the gates are spinning. Tenzin was quick to demonstrate that, sending a powerful blast through the gates, sending the spinning at a rapid speed. The sight made KORRA's confidence drop considerably as Tenzin picked up a leaf and allowed it to flow into the circle of spinning gates. Surprisingly, the small plant was easily guided past each gate as Tenzin explained, the idea being to follow the flow of the gates, before asking Jinora to demonstrate. The young airbender walked forward and maneuvered herself through the gaps and openings flawlessly, exiting the center safely. KORRA had to admit, she was impressed. And Tenzin seized this opening to speak about airbending in a way that she could understand. Airbending is all about spiral movements. When you meet resistance, you must be able to switch direction at a moment's notice. On the other side, Jinora launched a blast of air into the panels as they started moving again. KORRA eyed the gates, burying whatever concerns she might have had with her usual bravado. Alright, let's do this. Without hesitation she charged at full speed towards the gates while the others watched, already dreading the results. In mere moments the sounds of wood meeting skin, various cries of pain and finally anguished groans echoed across the air temple. Thanks for your patronage and have a nice day. Naruto waved at his latest customer while putting some of the money in his register. Business had been steady, and he'd heard a fair amount along the streets about the Avatar's antics the previous day. Naturally, what was spoken was mixed. Some, namely the civilians in the area, were grateful for the assistance, while others, in particular members of the police force, were less than thrilled by her showing. The day had eventually ended with KORRA announcing her presence to Republic City and intent to help out the citizens, which in turn had raised concerns amongst his followers, which naturally he did his best to placate. Deciding to distract himself, he leaned over and turned on a nearby radio to the news section. Breaking news. Local members of the Triple Threat Triad involved in yesterday's scuffle with Republic City's newest resident, Avatar KORRA, were able to make bail and were released earlier this morning. Many citizens were outraged by this decision and have voiced their concerns. The Republic City Council has yet to offer a response and many question this continued inaction. Almost immediately Naruto clicked the radio off and had to struggle to contain his rage. his bandaged left hand tightening to where he could hear the skin start to crack, though that turned out to be the pair of chopsticks he'd been holding. Quickly he tried his best to take a few calming breaths, yet he knew that wouldn't be enough. Once again the justice system fails to punish the guilty. Naruto's eyes drifted to his cloth-covered hand and a familiar tingling started to run up his left limb. Looks like we won't have a shortage of volunteers for the demonstration in a few days. Tabling that train of thought for the moment, he quickly turned his attention to cleaning bowls. Yet as he did, Naruto's mind drifted back to his encounter with KORRA, still unsure how concerned he should be about her. She at least seems somewhat open-minded. Though, I can't exactly allow myself to let my guard down. Especially given that the revelation is coming up soon. As his mind drifted, the sound of something slapping against the front counter of his cart caused him to drop the bowl he was washing and almost jolt up. What the heck? Walking around his cart, he was prepared to give an earful to whoever was potentially damaging his cart only to look perplexed at who exactly it was. KORRA? Yes. The avatar had once again graced his cart with her presence, though graced in name only. The young water tribe girl currently had her face planted firmly on the cart's counter, arms hanging at her side, almost making the young noodle seller wonder if she was even conscious. Her faithful companion Naga sitting just behind looking at her master curiously. Naruto himself wasn't sure what to make of it and slowly approached. KORRA? No response. He leaned over on his toe and gently nudged her to get a response. KORRA, you okay over there? The only answer he got was a light moan from the avatar, who refused to move her head from the countertop, leaving Naruto unsure what to do. Would you like to see the specials today? Another moan was her response, though with a slightly lighter pitch indicating it yes. With a shrug, Naruto walked back to behind the counter and grabbed a menu, before trying to hand it to KORRA, only for her to still not respond. Letting off a huff and blowing some of his hair out of his eyes, Naruto placed the menu near KORRA's head, then reached over, grabbing the scruff of the collar of her shirt and gently lifted her up, just a few inches off the counter. KORRA seemed to not mind, keeping her neck straight as he did. With a push, he slid the menu under before lowering her back down, now making it so her eyes were seeing the text instead of the wood. Oh hey, I didn't know you had Arctic hen. By the spirits, she speaks. It's a miracle. Naruto spoke with a dramatic flair and gesture, as KORRA finally lifted her head up, allowing Blue Eyes to meet Blue once more. Haha, very funny. KORRA spoke, almost sounding defeated and mildly annoyed. Hey, I'm not the one who decided to communicate in mumbles until food was involved, and I'm guessing you already know what you wanted this time around. His snark got a small smirk from KORRA as she nodded and Naruto went around back and started mixing ingredients, while KORRA placed her crossed arms on the counter and topped her chin on them. So, what's got the avatar all sulky today? Did they talk your ear off yesterday? Naruto's tone was kept playful, not wanting to potentially sour her mood further as KORRA huffed into her arms. No. I mean yeah. Got a serious chewing out from the chief of police and Tenzin. Oof. You met with Lin Baifong? I guess old lady Ironside wasn't in a friendly mood. The nickname got KORRA to chuckle again as she nodded. Yup, gave me the 3rd degree and everything. Though Tenzin managed to smooth things over and is letting me stay here in Republic City. Even started my airbending training today. From behind the counter, Naruto's eyebrows raised and his curiosity peaked. Oh really? That's cool. A moment of total silence passed between them, and Naruto recognized it was an invitation to ask the question, and how'd it go? Another loud slap was her response, causing Naruto to look through the serving window and see KORRA's forehead now resting on her arms. I'm gonna take that as not great. Rather than moan, the avatar shifted her head slightly up and down, which was almost funny, but also kind of depressing the more you looked at it. Pulling his face back and adding some noodles to the boiling water, he gave KORRA a moment before making his next respond. So, you want to talk about it, or are you just gonna sulk until your food's here? KORRA's head shifted up to allow her eyes and nose to be free, lightly glaring at the blonde behind the wall. Naruto didn't even flinch and simply smirked. Hey, glare all you want. I told you I'd be honest, and you are honestly just sulking right now. The young avatar huffed in annoyance, but didn't dispute him and just listened to the sounds of the city for a moment. My first day of airbending training and I couldn't even get through the stupid gates. I must have looked like a total idiot. Gates? Again Naruto poked his head out of the window, while casually adding bits of meat and vegetables to the mixture. Yeah, Tenzin had me running through a bunch of spinning gates. Something about being like the leaf. KORRA winced as she recalled her performance. And all I learned is how painful it is to get smacked over and over again by a bunch of spinning wooden doors. Peeved. At the odd sound, KORRA looked up, and her expression went from depressed to royally peeved at the sight of Naruto, currently struggling to hold down what looked like a massive laugh. It's not funny. He didn't agree, as he finally let loose a loud belly laugh, while KORRA simply sat in her seat, red-faced and embarrassed as he laughed for a solid few seconds. KORRA in turn leveled a mean glare at him. Are you done? Naruto took a breath and nodded. Yeah, sorry about that. But come on, I mean you gotta admit it's a pretty funny visual. His mind still pictured it as he added all the ingredients to a bowl and finally handed it to KORRA along with a pair of chopsticks. With an angry twitch, KORRA broke the sticks and practically stabbed them into the bowl, before quickly slurping up the noodles. You should pace yourself. The food's not gonna run away. KORRA didn't answer initially, still huffing a bit, making Naruto reconsider his approach. Okay. Look, I'm not gonna laugh anymore, promise. Opening the window somewhat, Naruto leaned forward and placed his elbows on the counter. I don't see what the big deal is. I mean, did you really expect to nail it on the first try? KORRA slowed her eating, but still didn't respond, making Naruto raise an eyebrow. Wait, seriously? You actually thought you'd just figure it out from the start? The avatar paused before she shrugged. I mean, kind of. Her eyes focused on her reflection in the bowl, stirring one of the sticks around inside of it. That's how it was with the other elements. I mean, I wasn't a master from birth or anything, but I always had at least a bit of a handle on how they worked. I was throwing water, producing fire, and kicking up earth since as long as I could remember. I didn't see any reason why air would be any different. Naruto felt genuinely stunned by this little revelation. After their first meeting, he saw that KORRA was pretty reckless and a fair bit sheltered, but given her upbringing he expected that. Now, however, it seemed in addition to those things, the avatar also had of all things a superiority complex. That or she just didn't quite grasp the concept of genuine hard work. Opting to try and keep things playful, he just smirked and lightly poked KORRA in the arm. Hey, come on, lighten up a little. So airbending is a little more difficult to nail down, big deal. It's not like you're in a rush or anything, right? KORRA didn't smile this time, still looking uneasy and unsure of herself. But I'm the avatar, I'm supposed to master all 4 elements and I can't even get through some gates or make a light breeze. Literally. One of the other students makes it look like a fart coming out his back and I can't even do that. What are you talking about? Of course you can make a breeze. KORRA looked confused, only for her expression to turn flat when Naruto started to blow air from his mouth, making a nearby napkin rise up a little. See, I'm sure even you can do that much, right? And as for the backside, we're all doing a little bit airbending if you think about it. Huh? KORRA's face remained like stone, leaving Naruto to sweat a little bit. Okay, guess humor isn't gonna help and the last thing I want is to piss her off, so new plan. Alright KORRA, listen. Naruto's tone became more serious as he looked KORRA in the eye. Tell me something, is the world in danger right now? I don't think so. KORRA now looked confused as to where Naruto was going with this. Is there some kind of massive war or dangerous spirit threatening mankind? I really hope there isn't. Naruto's expression then turned from serious to more peaceful. Then stop worrying so much about it. Avatar Aang had to speed through the elements in order to stop the Fire Lord and end the 100 Years' War. You don't have any looming threat that demands you master the 4 elements as quickly as possible. So you shouldn't panic if you don't immediately figure out airbending. The world isn't going to literally end if it takes you more than a week to get it down. For a moment Naruto's words seemed to resonate with KORRA and even perk her up a bit. Though internally his thoughts betrayed his words. At least, I hope there isn't a looming threat. But that'll depend heavily on you KORRA. And where you and I stand. His eyes glanced at his own reflection in KORRA's bowl and his eyes glowed a faint reddish color again, reminding him of his own mission. I get what you're saying Naruto, but I'm not sure. KORRA still sulked, though a little less than before. The whole reason I came here was to learn airbending and I don't know how I'm supposed to figure this out. Putting those darker thoughts aside for a moment, Naruto's mind quickly formed an idea. Perhaps if she gets her mind off airbending for a while, it might help. And I think I know how to use that for both our benefits. Seeing her bowl was mostly empty, Naruto grabbed it and pulled it in to clean it. Hey, I wasn't done yet. Naruto ignored her and poured the remaining contents in the sink and quickly cleaned the bowl before putting things away. What, did I ruin the mood with my sulking? Korra spoke with a frown and a hint of hurt at the sight of Naruto quickly shutting down his cart. However, the noodle vendor quickly appeared from behind with a smile. On the contrary, I quite enjoy your company, Korra. Rather, I think I have something that can take your mind off this whole airbending thing. Folding up his counter and bringing down a slide to cover it, he quickly moved to the back of the cart to start pushing it, with Korra looking a bit confused. And what is that exactly? Transition? Naruto. Where exactly are we? Korra was currently standing outside of a rather large two-story green brick building in a quieter part of Republic City. Naga to her left while Naruto and his cart were to the right. The blonde noodle vendor currently with a beaming smile as he gestured to the building. Korra, welcome to the Jiangwei Sanctuary. Gesturing her to follow, he slowly pushed his cart forward. The building itself had a small wall surrounding it, with a grass-covered yard and some benches, occupied by various individuals and even children. Many of them were either talking, laughing or playing, seemingly happy enough. Though Korra noted at a glance some crucial details. Many of the people's clothing were ragged, dirty, with visible tears in some of them. Similarly, several people were unshaven, with unkempt hair and even a little dirt present. Who are all these people? Korra felt a sense of melancholy looking at them, as Naruto adopted a sad smile as he parked his cart and started to open it up. These are the less fortunate people of Republic City, Korra. People who either don't have a home or simply don't have the money to hold onto one. The young avatar looked like she'd been dunked in ice, looking upon the many people with new eyes. But, I thought Republic City was supposed to be a sort of well-off utopia? A utopia? Naruto spoke the words with a hollow edge as he finished unpacking his cart. For many people it is, but for some, life isn't so fortunate, I'm afraid. Korra looked around stunned. Sure, she'd heard about the poverty line before, but seeing it was another thing entirely. True enough, the people looked to be in good spirits, but between their worn clothes and in some cases visible malnourishment, it was mostly a facade for appearance sake. These people didn't have homes to go to. In the South Pole, some homes were larger than others, but no one was ever homeless. They couldn't take the risk in a tundra. But here, in the center point of the modern world, some people seemed to slip through the cracks. Naruto, having set up his cart and starting to draw eyes, approached Korra, who looked to him for answers. I don't get it, how are these people poor in the first place? Everything I ever heard about Republic City said it was this amazing place where everyone has the chance at a good life. Naruto let off a slightly bitter chuckle at her question. To answer that question, Korra, look around. Other than the people being poor, notice anything similar about them? Again Korra looked around yet couldn't find a connection. They were of various ages, seemingly from different nations. Really there wasn't anything obvious, the only thing she did notice was a surprising lack of bending. They're all non-benders. She spoke almost with a whisper as Naruto nodded, which only left Korra more confused. But, I don't understand. Why is them not being able to bend so important? Naruto was prepared to answer, but held his tongue when he noticed someone else approaching. Very few people understand, I'm afraid, though most simply chose to ignore it. Less hassle, I suppose. Korra's neck snapped to the voice next to Naruto and found a middle-aged man with short black hair and a long mustache that extended past his chin. He was clad in a simple green suit jacket, with a white undershirt, light green tie, gray pants and shoes. Perhaps most striking were the glasses with green lenses adorning his face. Despite his somewhat shocking interruption, he offered the avatar a smile and a light bow. Apologizes for the intrusion, but I thought it polite to welcome the avatar to my humble facility. Korra, being a bit on the spot, returned the bow, looking a little sheepish. Guess, I was thinking a little out loud, huh? Naruto chuckled as he shook the man's hand. Korra, I'd like you to meet Lu Zhujiao. He's the owner and founder of this place, and a good friend of mine. Lu then offered his hand to the avatar. It's truly a pleasure, Avatar Korra. Korra quickly took the offered hand and shook it, trying to maintain some level of her normal confidence despite the unfamiliar environment. Same Mr. Zhujiao. Korra's smile slowly dropped as her gaze returned to the people. which Lu naturally picked up on. You were wondering why there were so many non-benders here? It's sadly an unfortunate reality of the time we live in. What do you mean? Naruto was the one to answer. Korra, remember your little run-in with the police? Did you notice how pretty much all of them were metal benders? Korra didn't answer, looking a little embarrassed at how she'd missed that detail due to being more worried about the earfuls she'd get from Tenzin. Well, after the 100 Years' War ended, benders weren't constrained to their respective nations anymore. Couple that with the various developments like metal bending and electricity as a primary source of power along with the nations sharing technologies, bending suddenly became even more valuable as a skill set. Lu nodded in his assessment. Many prominent jobs within Republic City are almost exclusively operated by benders. The police force is almost entirely metal benders, same with the fire department and water benders. Construction is handled by earth benders and power plants tend to hire mostly fire benders. Both men looked upon things with a somber air as Korra struggled to process things. But that can't be true for everything, right? I mean, bending can do a lot but benders can't do everything. Yes, and there are some non-benders who've made names for themselves, but they are the exception, not the rule. Many non-benders do try to make the most by starting their own businesses, only for groups like the Triads to come along and ruin that. Korra's mind recalled the previous encounter and Naruto's mention of how that area was mainly populated by non-benders. It's tragically a vicious cycle of sorts. Most high-paying positions favor benders, and when non-benders attempt to make their own businesses, bending criminals use their own abilities to exploit and in some cases ruin them. Lu spoke with a hint of bitterness too. Though he quickly shook it off and tried to regain his more chipper mood. Of course, that's exactly why I created this place, to give these people a place to stay, food to eat and perhaps even help them get back on their feet. The older man then patted Naruto on the shoulder, who smirked a little. It also helps when we have people like Naruto here willing to lend a hand from time to time. You help out here, Naruto? Korra looked at the blonde with awe and newfound respect, to which he nodded. Yup. I come by every couple of days to give as many people as I can food from my cart. Naruto jerked his thumb back to the cart, revealing an already forming line at the front of it. A lot of people really enjoy my noodles and I'm happy to lend a hand where it's needed. The blonde's smile seemed to beam brighter than before and it seemed to wash away the more depressing atmosphere of the place, perking up Korra quite a bit. More so when a couple of children ran over to the young man. Naruto, you're back. How've you been? We missed you. Do you still have those hippo cow noodles from last week? They were really good. The small crowd started to form around the blonde, who happily responded to each comment with a smile, while Korra and Lu simply watched on. He's certainly popular. Korra chuckled at the sight of one of the children climbing on his shoulder. Naruto's always had that way with people. It's a gift, I suppose. Lu spoke with a hint of reverence as he eyed the avatar curiously. Whatever he was thinking, however, was halted when Naruto approached. So Korra, mind lending me a hand? The avatar, now on the spot, with wide eyes, uttered the only thing she could. Huh? Naruto gently grabbed her wrist and led her over to the back of his cart before handing her an apron. With the cooking, I mean. Got a big crowd and need some help. Plus I figured this would help you get your mind off the whole airbending thing. Korra was somewhat on autopilot, eyeing the apron for a moment before putting it on, though struggling to find an answer. But, I mean, I don't. She stopped when she felt a hand on her shoulder. Relax, I'm not gonna make you do anything too complicated. It's pretty easy once you get the hang of it. Naruto put on his own apron and prepared to start. Now, if you could just start boiling some water for me, I'll get the noodles ready. Actually, Naruto, could I borrow you for a moment? Both teens looked at Lu confused. Naruto, though, quickly shifted a bit to annoyed. Lu, kind of in the middle of something here. Lu, however, didn't budge. I'm aware, but it's urgent. It's concerning the delivery you and I discussed next week. Naruto's eyes stayed still, recognizing the hidden meaning and groaning a little. Fine, but only a minute. Don't want to leave Korra all high and dry after all. He turned to the now panicking avatar, as the crowd around the cart grew a little. Naruto, maybe this isn't a good idea. It's just boiling water, Korra. And I'll be back in a minute, promise. Korra, with many eyes now on her, adopting her more confident face, nodded and got to work as Naruto and Lu walked closer to the building, out of earshot of the group. Once they were out of view, Naruto's smile dropped and his face hardened. Lu, what's this about? Is this wise, sir? Bringing the avatar here of all places? Lu's tone was more serious as his eyes drift back to the avatar, manning the stove, though looking a little out of sorts. She's quite possibly the biggest threat to our entire organization. Or she could be our greatest ally. Naruto spoke firmly as he leaned against the wall, staring out at Republic City. Once the revelation takes place, we'll be in the public eye, and that means we'll be at odds with some powerful people within the city. When that happens, you know they'll try to sick KORRA on us like some kind of attack dog. Naruto's hands clenched lightly at the idea. I've only known her for a short time, but I can tell she's a good person. A little stubborn and bullheaded maybe, but someone who'd be willing to hear us out and even stand on our behalf, if we open her eyes to the truth. Lu seemed to agree with the sentiment, though only slightly. Having the avatar on our side would be a boon to our group, but it's a risky gamble. She's already connected to members of the council and by her very nature is more connected to benders than to us. And that's why I brought her here. So she can see things from our perspective, to look beyond what she's been told and see the struggle firsthand. You heard what she said, Lu. She thinks benders can't do everything either, and was heartbroken by what she saw here. Naruto pushed off the wall and looked his second in command in the eye. You've trusted me this far, Lu, please just have faith in me. A soft chuckle was the response from the man. Even now you can still sway me. The older man nodded. Very well, sir, I'll trust your judgment for now, though I think you might have miscalculated in letting her help with the cooking. Confused, Naruto looked over his subordinate's shoulder. To see a visibly irritated KORRA preparing to use fire bending to heat up the water she'd been asked to boil. Wah, KORRA, no. Don't do that. Stop the fire. Naruto immediately ran over, practically tackling the avatar before she could potentially set his cart on fire. That was more than a minute. I didn't think you'd try to burn everything. I'm not a cook. I tried to warn you. It was just boiling water. I was gonna do that. The visual caused many of the people watching to laugh and point at the duo, with Naruto getting quite animated with KORRA. It was an amusing sight for Lu, being reminded that the man he chose to follow was still a teenager. Transition. I said I was sorry. KORRA grumbled as she was washing a large stack of dirty bowls, while Naruto was serving the last of his ingredients to a customer. And I told you I wasn't angry. Naruto dropped his professional smile and closed the window to his cart. Luckily I managed to stop you before you decided to speed up the cooking process and give everyone here a nice bonfire to look at. So no big deal. Despite the usual ribbing from the teen, KORRA could hear the slight hint of an edge to it, half expecting him to follow it up with some kind of stern lecture for almost destroying his cart. I just thought I could, move things along faster. All those people were hungry and it didn't seem right to make them wait. Naruto sighed at KORRA's logic, as in theory it wasn't a bad idea. Problem was the amount of risk factors involved, and KORRA herself admitted she'd never actually tried using her bending in such a way, but figured it was worth a shot. It got him wondering if Avatar Aang ever tried doing something like that when he was kid. You can't rush through everything, KORRA. Some things take time and patience. KORRA grit her teeth at his words, angrily scrubbing harder to remove more of the filth on the bowls. Now you're sounding just like Tenzin. Feels kind of like some people would be flattered to be compared to the only airbending master alive. His attempt at a deflection only made KORRA slam the bowl into the sink, splashing water everywhere. Okay, not the time for jokes. Naruto frowned a little, not expecting such a reaction from KORRA, who was now staring at her own reflection in the water of the sink. Look, I'm sorry, but being patient and waiting things out, that's never really clicked with me. KORRA's mind drifted back to her past in the Southern Water Tribe. Whenever she'd wanted to do something, she'd always tackled it head-on, whether it was bending, combat training, or even just basic things. She'd always rushed in, confident she could figure it out. Up to this point, I've had to adopt every other form of life you can imagine. I've been told to be flexible like water, to stand my ground like the earth, or to charge forward like fire. That stuff I can do. That stuff I've been good at. Being patient was never something I needed to do, could afford to do, and things just seemed to work out fine. She looked down at the dirty sink, reaching in and pulling out the bowl she'd just dunked, and now finding out there's more stuff I'll never get unless I'm patient. It sucks. Again Naruto found himself seeing another side to KORRA, and he felt a great swell of pity form inside of him. Each of the different mindsets were taken from the various bending disciplines she'd learned and had helped shape who she was as a person, with little room for anything else. The more I talk with KORRA, the more it becomes clear that the Avatar really has defined everything she is. Has any part of her life not been centered around her position? Deciding to table that thought for the moment, Naruto opted to focus on the matter at hand. Hey, I get it. If it isn't broke, why fix it? But patience is something everyone needs from time to time regardless of who they are. And yeah, it's annoying to figure out, but it's pretty valuable too. And I'm sure you'll appreciate it once you get the hang of it. Naruto's tone was more gentle compared to before and his accepting smile seemed to at least somewhat relieve some of the tension KORRA had been feeling. Certainly beat the heck out of being sternly lectured about it for the 20th time today. Look, I'm not saying you have to develop the patience of a monk or something right away. And yeah, dropping you off behind the counter might have been a bit too fast on my part, even though it was just boiling water. KORRA immediately frowned at the jab, causing Naruto to casually hold his hands up in defense. Just learn to take things slower is all. Naruto's smile turned into his normal beaming grin. Who knows, you might end up liking it, assuming you get that temper of yours under control. Oh, I've got a temper now, huh? KORRA quickly waterbent some of the soapy water from the sink directly into Naruto's face, causing his naturally spiky hair to go limp and him to get brand new soap beard for his trouble. The sight caused several of the people around to laugh and even KORRA was chuckling at the sight. Naruto himself even smiled a bit as well despite having literal soap in his mouth. Yeah, okay, I walked into that. You win this round, KORRA. Naruto quickly grabbed a towel and wiped his face clean, while KORRA did a little fist pump at her victory over her new friend. Glad to see you're in a better mood though. Seems like you managed to get your mind off this morning, I take it? KORRA's smile shifted to a blank expression for a moment before giving a casual, if relaxed shrug. Yeah, fire starting aside, I do feel a lot better, though. Her eyes shifted to the various residents of the shelter. Now I feel like I should be doing more. I mean, the whole point of being the Avatar is to help people, right? Her moment of introspection was halted when she felt some water splash into her own face. What the heck? You were starting to get all mopey again. Once KORRA was able to open her eyes, she found a towel waiting for her, Naruto looking at her with a sympathetic glance. Being here, doing something as simple as giving these people food and making them smile, that's helping. No one is expecting you to fix all their problems in a day. Like I said before, it takes time, and stressing out over everything isn't helping anyone. And you shouldn't let your duties rule your life completely. His words seemed to strike a chord with the Avatar, at least somewhat. Guess I never really thought about it like that. KORRA took the towel and dried herself off as Naruto smirked. Hey, admitting something is the first step towards fixing it. Might be a good idea to find stuff to do outside of Avatar stuff. You know? KORRA actually perked up at the idea, looking almost a little giddy at something. Now that you mention it, I really wanted to check out some pro bending matches. Heard about them all the time in the South Pole, but Tenzin isn't exactly fond of it. Says it's a perversion of the noble art of bending. The Avatar's attempt at Tenzin's stuffy voice made Naruto cackle a little. Yeah, that sounds about right. And pro bending wouldn't be a bad thing to try. Heck, I'm pretty confident you'd do well yourself. His compliment made KORRA's face light up a little. You think so? I believe your little encounter with those triad goons say you've got the skills. KORRA's smile seemed to brighten at the praise, though her attention shifted when she looked up at the sky, more specifically the setting sun. Crap, it's getting late. Last thing I need today is Tenzin getting on my case about being out too late. The sound of a chuckle earned its source a glare from KORRA as she whistled Naga over to her, hopping onto the saddle, as well as earning a few gasps and ahs from some of the children. She looked down at Naruto. I'll see you around, Naruto. I'll make sure to stop by your stand the next time I'm free. Naruto waved happily at her. I'll make sure to have a nice hot bowl ready for you, along with maybe continuing our cooking lessons. Despite the jab, KORRA actually seemed a little excited at the idea. I'll hold you to that. Later, with a pull of the reins, KORRA led her partner back towards Air Temple Island, leaving Naruto standing there, watching her retreating back as Lu walked over to him. She is certainly different from what I expected, but are you sure we can sway her to our side, sir? Naruto didn't look away from the still visible Avatar, mind processing everything that had happened during the day and what it meant for the future. I hope we can. Transition night had settled in Republic City. Most of the streets were empty save for the night owls and people visiting local taverns. Naturally, Naruto's cart was still open. Many of the more shady types tended to come out this time of the day, and naturally it was a perfect time to gather information. Though business was pretty slow tonight, with Naruto's cart basically empty, and him debating closing up for the night. Still need to go over everything with Lou and the other members. Also need to find a new promoter for our group and get Big Mouth off the rotation. His musings were interrupted by the sound of someone face planting on his countertop, forcing him to look outside. "KORRA, is that you again?" Looking through the window, he didn't find the ponytailed head of the avatar on his counter. Instead, it was a young man with short black hair currently using his counter as a headrest. More curiously was a small orange and black furred creature sitting not too far away from said individual. Naruto's blue eyes widened as he recognized the individual and his little companion. "Hey, Bolin, nice to see you again." The young teen actually raised his arm up and waved at the noodle shop owner. "Hi Naruto, good to see you too. I'll take the usual please." Naruto actually whistled a little as his new customer had managed to say all of that without ever moving his head from the counter. Pulling his head back, he got to work cooking, while of course, not allowing things to remain quiet. "So, mind explaining why you're using my counter for a pillow, or are we just gonna ignore it?" Bolin managed to lift his head up, placing his chin on the wood instead of his face, defeat etched into his face. "The fire ferrets are finished." "Wait, what?" Naruto paused his cooking in surprise. "What do you mean finished? You've been talking about participating in the Pro Bending Championship tournament for months. So much so several of my other customers have started complaining." He frowned at the earthbender. "I've been looking forward to the new season thanks to you. Well, they won't have to listen to me for much longer." Bolin's head returned to the counter, though on the left side of his head so at least he could speak coherently. "Hasa quit today and now we don't have enough guys for a full team." Naruto frowned a little, knowing exactly who Bolin was talking about. His team, the Fire Ferrets, were regulars at his cart and he'd become quite familiar with all three of them. Bolin was a nice enough guy, jolly, optimistic and passionate about pro bending, while his brother Mako was a bit more serious and calm, but again not a bad guy even if he did occasionally act like he had a stick up his ass. Hasuk, however, the group's resident waterbender, was well, kind of a dick. Every time they showed up at the cart he'd regularly butt heads with Mako and oftentimes he'd need to step in to keep a fight from breaking out. The guy also had quite an ego on him and seemed to be unable to admit to his own shortcomings, so no surprise he'd eventually call it quits. However, Naruto's own face slowly curved into a grin as an idea started to form as he peered through the window again. "Say, Bolin," the downtrodden fire ferret looked up at him with misty eyes. "I think I might have a solution to your problem." Thanks for watching, guys.